Hey, this is Connor Harding, and for my frame, shot, and sequence analysis, I'll be using a clip from Alexander Dovzhenko's film Earth. Specifically, I'm analyzing the sequence in the latter half of the movie where the protagonist, Vasil, is murdered in an alleyway. I'm using direct screen capture, so you can hear me talk as you see what I'm seeing here on my computer screen. So let's begin. Alright, now pause. This is the frame we're going to begin with for the analysis. And this particular sequence we're looking at begins kind of strangely with this frame. It's a pond with some fog on it. Now, when you consider this in the context of the film, it seems pretty out of place. The sequence directly before this one was made up of a lot of long takes of farmers holding their sweethearts after a long day of work. And then here comes this seemingly random transitional frame you're looking at now. So now the look of this frame is definitely in line with the overall style of the film. In Earth, Dovzhenko makes extensive use of camera filters, specifically ones that reduce the amount of light reaching the film, creating the illusion of nighttime. Cameras this early on in the history of cinema could not properly record in low light conditions, so to make it seem like it was night, Dovzhenko would shoot scenes during the day, but with darkening filters. You can see this in the frame we're looking at now, as it appears as if the pawn shot was taken at night, even though that wasn't really possible at the time. The flaws in this technique become evident when we analyze the rest of the sequence, but for now, it's important to notice how the darker tones you see in this frame not only are very typical of the film as a whole, but how they also contribute to the plot. The frame we're looking at is an especially somber looking one, and that's important because Dovzhenko is foreshadowing here. The feeling in the previous sequence was positive because there was a rejoicing of the harvest, but with this quick shot, a sense of unease becomes apparent. So now, let's let the clip roll quickly. Notice the fog is eerily drifting across the pond. Also, if we let it roll again and crank up the volume, you can listen to the background music. A bunch of ghostly moans. So, with this put together, it's pretty clear something bad's going to happen here. So now let's let this roll and move on to the clip. Pause it here, and this is the beginning of the clip. The hero Vasil is walking slowly towards the camera. Now presumably these scenes are all taped outside and aren't sets, so there isn't a lighting system, so to speak, other than Dovzhenko's use of light filters. Now if we let this play here for a second, you notice the shadows moving across his face. Dovzhenko is taking advantage of the natural lighting to create a series of attached shadows on Vasil. This moves around depending on where he is in the path he's traveling, which adds to the overall realism of the clip. Now if we let this roll again, you can see the drawback of the primitive darkening technique he's using. In the flickering of light, let's roll back here for a second. See how it flickers back and forth, as if the filters are struggling to really filter the light effectively. Also, if you look on the contrary, note the smoothness with which the camera moves here. Vasil's moving forward, but stays relatively the same distance from the camera. And the preservation of this close framing is a subtle but really effective way to draw the attention towards Vasil's face, which shows a tentative expression. If we go back, see, you notice he looks as if he's uneasy, which carries on the greater theme going on here. But as you notice where I paused it earlier, it quickly cuts to a horse, right here. A very short take. It only goes for a couple seconds, and then we're back to Vasil. And this is important, because this quickness in editing breaks continuity, and makes you wonder what that horse is all about. Given the primitive and natural state of an animal like the horse eating a field, it's pretty safe to assume that it's a symbol of agriculture and sustenance in life, kind of what Earth the film is all about. So we go back with the rest of the clip, and it goes back to Vasil, still with a close-up framing of his face, drawing you to notice, look at that, a smile forming. Now this breaks the thematic continuity established so far, and the tension created earlier lifts a bit for the first time. Now, let it roll. He continues walking, and we switch to a medium frame shot after a bit more of his walking forward. And this switch up, as you see right here, creates a nice feeling of movement to the clip. So now, if we let this roll for a while, not only is the music building, but we move towards the sequence, which is composed initially of a series of long takes. Vasil is walking slowly towards the camera in these shots, and thematically, though the same eerie music continues, a sense of peace comes out here. Though all the parts of the frame, clip, and sequence are important, it's here that we can really see the theme of the overall film coming out. So this is really the meat and potatoes bit. Now, ideologically, this film is all about the collectivization of rural farms under Stalin. Though the whole film is about the transition from old to new, the sequence in particular is the transition within the transition, and thus is really the heart of the film. Now I'll actually pause this here, so we'll pause correspondingly. The sequence starts with the frame we went over, and those tenuous, scary undertones we saw, which represented the apprehension of change one feels before that change actually happens. Then the clip, Vasil walking directly after the pawn shop, is the actual beginning movement of change happening, ergo, the shift from one way to another, represented in the change in Vasil's expression as you saw him form the smile. And now finally, the lifting of tension happens here in the sequence, as he thoughtfully walks forward in the long takes. Now, notice the comfortable medium shots as well, with their slow progression moving forward especially. It represents the internalization and acceptance of the change of collectivization. Now, with the new freedom that he finds in this acceptance, Vasil breaks into a traditional hopak dance down the dirt road. And there you see him breaking out into the dance. This is the excitement for the bright future promised by Stalin, and the time period as a whole for the Soviet Union. Joy! Hooray! But let's turn the music back up here and notice it's still as ominous and foreboding it has been the entire time. In fact, it's building. Also, let's pause for a second. Notice the dust trails that Vasil is kicking up. This natural effect of movement is heightened by the filters Dovzhenko uses, especially right here. A lot of flickering, but the dirt trails really start to pick up as it goes down the path. So pretty strong theme contrast here with the happiness in this dance, but with the building intense music. Keep that turned down. It's getting so intense I have to turn it down else you won't hear me. But definitely see the dirt trails being kicked up here. Very strong contrast. Let's pause that for a second. So, though this moment should be the joy of collectivization you see in his dancing, if you put together the dust trails and the heightening intensity of the soundtrack, these aspects of mise-en-scène that Dovzhenko puts together point to the reality of the situation that something has to go wrong. This happens as we let the sequence progress. Let's let it go here. And it's just building and building and building. Yet, Vasil seems so unaware, blissfully dancing, not sure what's going around him, and he edges closer and closer to the camera, allowing you to really see the joy in his face, especially right there. Pause it. Just smiling, having a great time. Stark contrast to the foreboding tones going on in the background. So let's let it go. And then suddenly, long frame shot. And boom! The hero, Vasil, murdered. Incredibly important moment here. If I roll, especially, quick, a cut to the horse that was referenced on earlier. The symbol of success. And now this reveals the purpose of Vasil's death, and the culmination of this entire transition. And that is that sacrifice must be made in order to ensure the bright future collectivization brings. So this means that Vasil was a necessary sacrifice to the success of the great plan set forth by Stalin, and thus is not only a hero, but a symbol of the struggle and sacrifice that the farmers must all endure. Now we'll let it roll. There's his murder running away. Now finally, the entire sequence culminates with a classic fade out to black. Now, stylistically, this entire film clip we just watched was uniform in a number of ways. If we scroll through little bits here, a pretty consistent axis of action. Good sense of unity going on there. A consistent amount of lighting, all very dark, foreboding tones in the lighting. And a strong sense of setting. We start out with the horse, and these familiar dirt trails all seem very believable in the background. So when you add up this uniformity, you get a nice, solid feel of continuity editing. And this is important, because that highlights and makes obvious the changes and breaks in continuity that we analyzed. Now, those changes, as we analyzed previously, are the cinematographical representations of the larger theme of history being made here, specifically being collectivization during the time period. Personally, I think it's absolutely brilliant that this short segment, only 3 minutes and 50 seconds in length, and which contains just a fraction of the plot within the movie, simultaneously represents the entire movie as a whole, while being just one part. And that should sound pretty familiar, as it's the main ideological belief of the time. This clip is just one part of a greater whole, but it's also a reflection of the whole itself. As above, so below. This is Dovzhenko's greatest success in the film, that he was able to essentially make this sequence a manifesto of communism itself, the whole and the unit working together and codependent. One cannot exist without the other, and though each unit may be one small part, is still just as important and can be as full of depth as the entire whole, especially highlighting the importance of personal sacrifice. That's why I paused it on this clip right here. So, trying to keep myself in line with Dovzhenko's style, I didn't want to discuss that deeper underlying message till now at the end, as you have to carefully appreciate the smaller details throughout the clip to see how this film within a film, if you will, really comes out. Personally, it took me a while till I realized the brilliance in this scene, and how it represents the larger film. Overall, it was definitely worth watching again. So, thanks for watching my analysis. Have a great day, and watch out for those crazy kulaks. And to send you off, I'll leave you with this, my take on the traditional Opak dance.
It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sit around like it's your birthday. And you don't know what you're not your birthday. Money in the club, bottle full of bug. Mama, I got what you need. You need to feel the love. I'm gonna have to take things and make it love. Come give me a hug. Yeah, and get love. You got me in the club, bottle full of bug. Mama, I got what you need. You need to feel the love. I'm gonna have to take things and make it love. Come give me a hug. Yeah, and get love. I'm 20 feet.